Well, this is unusual because, one, I reviewed a Grimlock not too long ago, and I've technically already reviewed this mold in its RID Takara release. However, it's eBay bound. That, and I kind of think it's worth looking at just to see the difference between the remold and the original, and to see what kind of changes they took, and just see for yourself which version of Grimlock is better in this mold. So we're going to take a look at the Generations Voyager class Grimlock. This is the Fall of Cybertron design. You can probably tell by all the inlaid colors for Energon lines and such. So what we have here is a more modernized T-Rex. He is central, his center mass is very central to his body. He is hunched over and very long and flat across the back. That's all very new school style T-Rex. And he's not really capable of getting into like the old Grimlock posture. He can kind of rear up a little bit, but not to a terrible amount. G1 fans are not going to be quite so happy with the with the stance that this Grimlock is capable of. So of course you can see he is cast in a silverish metal steel gray plastic. Oh, can you tell it's been a long day? already. Yeah, and there's also a bunch of gold paint, as well as some beige plastic that's supposed to be gold. Now, the gold paint itself does try and match up. It's kind of a pale shade, if you will, but there's really barely any metal flake in the beige itself, meaning it's probably not going to ever have the gold plastic issues that some figures have, but at the same time, it's not going to have that look of gold that Grimlock is typically known for. And a Dinobot's color scheme is usually pretty stark with a lot of gray hues, so he really needs that shiny pop that he's just not quite getting out of this beige. On the upside, he does have quite a bit of paint detail. You can see a lot of little spots painted in. Of course, War of Cybertron's big thing, and then Fall of Cybertron, of course, is inlaid energon that was exposed through. Now, I don't know about you, I really wouldn't want my internal veins that carry all my blood to actually be exposed on the outside of my body. That might be a little bit weird, but it was just the thing. Everyone had kind of a Tron-esque thing going, and they did do an admirable job making sure all the paint reflected that. You can also find some extra paint aside from all those stuff on the tail, throughout some of the neck where the spines are, as well as parts on the back, which is more suited to robot mode when we get there. And then, of course, the head. The head itself, some translucent plastic inlaid into the big cranium, as well as more of the red, and an Autobot sigil painted around in black with the actual symbol left exposed. That is because this Grimlock actually has an electronic gimmick, a super rare thing for a Voyager class toy to have these days. But if we click the switch back, everything lights up red inside. This is replicating his fire-breathing ability from the game, which is a really cool thing for them to include. Now, it also means the Autobot sigil on his head lights up. That's cool, but I also like how there's a line running through, that the Energon line thing kind of coming through. That kind of looks cool. I like that. The light also kind of shows off how thin the plastic is in some spots, because you probably shouldn't be able to see through his nose that way. But still, it's a great little subtle and inexpensive way of actually including his fire breath ability. And it's nice to see some kind of electronic gimmick in a toy again. The main issues people generally have with the figure is the tail is extremely heavy, and I would dare say there's more bulk in the tail than the rest of the torso because it's quite hollow on the underside. That's a really unfortunate thing on this toy, and it's one of the big grievances a lot of people have with it. Now, there were ways they could have fixed it. I mean, he does come with a shield that I know is more game accurate, but if he could just invented a shield that would have clipped in place there and kind of filled that gap up, that really would have been nice. It also kind of highlights just how hollow the toy was in order to get the actual bulk. The main body itself has some pretty thin plastic, and if we look through, yeah, this flexes pretty easily. Now, I've seen thinner plastic since, but when this came out, a lot of people were kind of scoffing at just how thin and flimsy some of it felt compared to old toys. For the articulation, well, nothing in the head because that little gimmick to open the mouth kind of spring loads everything. Nothing really works there. Ball jointed shoulders, that works out pretty well. The hips are pegged in, but not too much, so you can't actually shake them loose and use what will become his robot mode shoulders as kind of universal hip joints. But they're kind of awkward in this pose, in this actual usage, so it doesn't really work out too well. But at the very least, you do have a swivel down here as well as some moving hinges on the claws. So at the very least, you got that going for you. And hey, if you want a little bit of playability, he does have sockets on the sides of his hips that can attach both the shield as well as his sword in what is an absolutely ridiculous way of posing your Grimlock. But he's capable of it, so you might as well if you feel like goofing around. Now, let's see, what can we do now? Well, I guess this is the robot mode portion of the review now, isn't it? Okay, so to start that off, I'm going to split the tail, which is kind of firm, and it's a good thing, the way it holds together nicely. Now, typical Grimlock fashion, the rear legs would, or the robot mode legs would flip out, and that means the center mass would become the lower feet, which helps in balance and generally looks a lot better. Here, they decided the hinge method was going to be a little bit better for this particular Grimlock, and while it might help replicate the video game design better, it also means, unfortunately, he does not, he has a super big tail, when he probably didn't have to, but that's a weird design choice. And you can blame the game designer, you can blame the toy designer, whichever one. Alright, so clip these out. Come on. There's a really weird hinge system in here in order to actually get this to work, so trying to... There we go. And we have to get this unpegged from the top. Out. Oh, come on. Oh. Ooh. That is a really solid joint. It's a really weird shape to it. I'll get a little bit more explanation once we get into the full robot. So from there, unclip the neck, and all this hinges down and fills up that hollow gap in his back. So at least there's that. With that, I'm going to flip him around. Get the hands out, close up the forearms. Do that again. Fist out, close up. And from there, we actually have our Grimlock in his finished robot mode. Ba-ba-ba-bum, and let's raise up. Now he's in frame. We can see him. Regardless of what you think about the proportions of the beast mode, it's hard to deny. This looks like a solid Grimlock. This has that physique, that super powerhouse look to him that I really like out of my Grimlocks. And it doesn't hurt that, yes, he does have a lot of G1 aesthetic to him despite his interesting beast mode. Taking a look at the head, yeah, that's definitely a Grimlock head. The front points of it are a lot sharper than usual. It gives him a fiercer look. And he's got those added vent shapes to the front of his mouth plate, all meant to make him just a little bit meaner looking. You can also see some interesting detail like translucent light-piped visor, as well as a whole bunch of techno junk around his neck, as if a whole bunch of wires just kind of converged together to hang on to his head somehow. Yay, war for Cybertron. This is how it works. So yeah, as said, he's got this very wide stance, big shoulders, big chest. He is the type of robot that looks like he could just power through anything he wants because he's Grimlock. That's what he does best. Now the result of this is because, of course, he is very hollowed out. You can see the inside, his shoulders are one piece with a bunch of hinges and such in the center. And of course, we have already discussed his entire torso's basically hollow. This is unfortunate, and it does lead to him having a very light feel And I think that's one of the reasons people kind of backlashed on this toy at first, because in spite of his size and his physical, like his illusion of girth, he's a very light toy. He does not seem like he has any kind of bulk or mass to him at all. And I think that's one of the reasons why people, in this figure in particular, started to notice, hey, they really aren't filling out the plastic the way they used to, are they? No, they're really not. Let's see what else this guy's got going on. Most of it was visible in the dyno mode, so we still have a lot of those red details highlighting around. What we can see now, however, is, well, all the gold and red from his back makes sense now. I kind of like how the gold is going up the side of his leg in this position. It kind of gives it the illusion of the leftover tail bits from the G1 Beast Mode design. So that kind of works out well. More gold in the front, red in the knees, so that all works nicely. The torso is actually pretty good. You've got this gunmetal gray. Nothing on this toy is actually in black, like previous Grimlocks. They went for gunmetal on a lot of it, and it's actually not a bad trade-up. You can also see a lot of inlaid translucent red, which is kind of an interesting thing, and it's neat to see. I really like how the chest looks. Again, they're trying to recreate a little bit of G1 detail and in a much more modernized form, and it works out pretty well. Also, unique sigil. It is an Autobot symbol with a little bit of Dinobot going on. It's an interesting little idea. Also, if we hit the switch on the back of the Beast Mode's neck, all the light up still works. Now, I wish it was positioned a little bit better. You can see if I move the head, you can see where that light goes. It's kind of a shame, because if the light reached these points up top, I think it'd be an extremely cool look. Unfortunately, it does not quite, doesn't have the hinging for that, so it doesn't quite reach, which is too bad. And again, like as I'm feeling it, I'm kind of reminded, yeah, very thin in some spots. Yeah, I could tell why people really noticed how hollow this toy felt. So, articulation. Ball-jointed head. Not a whole lot of up and down, but it does mean full left and right. Nothing gets in the way there. The shoulders. Let's talk about these shoulders. If we look on the inside, well, if we look on the inside, if I can get a shot that is actually in the light. The hard part about dark and like deep recesses is really hard to get anything in. You can see there is a stem leading to a swivel joint leading to some kind of faux ratcheting, some detents in there. It's a really weird system for a shoulder, and I'm not quite sure how they figured it out. But it does allow for some outward motion, which is on a detent, so it's super solid. Maybe it's more solid than it needs to be. And a slight detent moving the arm up and down, which does allow plenty of motion and range. Not great, but good. But what kills it is how loose the actual hinge is inside the torso. So what should give you a little bit more range is actually kind of making this flop around a little bit as you pose it. Bicep rotation works fine. Elbow, also detented, 90 degree. That's good. Wrist rotation, I like seeing that. Nothing in the waist. And this particularly bugs me because there's absolutely no reason for that other than they just didn't feel like engineering in. There's nothing interfering in his gimmick or transformation that causes it. It's just something they decided to leave out. That kind of sucks. Hips. Universal. Not a lot of range, though. The range, going outward's fine. And it's at this weird angle, which is a little bit odd, but you can still pose it just fine. It does not allow too wide a range outward. But then again, it's Grimlock. What's it going to do? Jump kicks? Thigh swivel? That works well. The knees. Now, because it's on that double hinge, the knees are a little bit iffy because one hinge wants to bend when the other one does not. And his actual knees detented really solid. So posing the legs is a little bit of a hassle. It is kind of unfortunate. Also, I'm trying to... It's one of those things where it's like, am I sure I put that in right? Am I sure I put that in right? But it does peg in, so... Yeah, that's about as right as it gets. It does look a little bit funny. And, ankles, nothing really rocks. They just kind of tilt the right direction. So, at the very least, it looks natural when he does that. So Grimlock himself does have some decent range of posability, and I really want that waist joint, but cannot have everything, now can we? But at least he can form up any kind of powerhouse poses you would want out of the Dinobot Commander. Let's see, what else do we have? Well, we do have his sword that is a lot more useful here. I do like the design. It looks better than it does on the Adventures version of Grimlock. The orange plastic just suits it really well, and this is where the gunmetal really looks good. Like that. Okay, so that goes into his hand, though he does have ports shoulder as well as there on the forearm if he wants to store it or arm blade it. The forearm is actually for his shield. It's one of those things where I kind of go, you know, yes, it's game accurate, but I'm still looking at the game designer and go, is that really the most efficient design of a shield? You couldn't, I don't know, spruce up a little bit more? Maybe a little bit more useful in shape? No. But that's where the forearm post comes in. Can't fit in the hand, but it can fit on the forearm, like so. Which looks a little bit more proper as a shield and sword combination. Which gives Grimlock a really good melee layout and a pretty dynamic look to him. So that, my friends, is Generations Grimlock, the Voyager class toy that feels about as heavy as some of the old deluxes. It's not a bad toy. It does have some weird features. The proportions in Dino Mode are very strange because of the style of transformation they went with. And he does have plenty of hollow issues for his size, but I will actually give Hasbro credit for creating a very large and wide stance. You know, if you're just looking for a Grimlock to look good on a shelf, this is a really, really good looking Grimlock. That said, playing with him is a little bit awkward, and I think some of it was smoothed out with the Adventures version. But if you just need a really good looking G1S Grimlock, you could do worse than this guy.